Hello, welcome to the State of Developmental Relationships from Search Institute. We are so glad you're here. I see people coming in right now. Those numbers of participants are just climbing right now, which is very exciting. And we are live here from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We would love to know where you're coming from. If you could in the chat, just put where you are, what city, state, or country, and then also what organization are you coming from, the name of the organization, and what type of organization, if you don't mind. Are you coming from school, from an out of school time organization, a government agency? We would love to hear from you. So please, in the chat as you're coming in, tell us where you're coming from and what organization are you affiliated with. And also that chat will be our way to be able to kind of to be able to monitor and interact with each other as well. And then if you look at the down below too, you can also put your questions that you might have for us as we go through this time. We got a bunch of great questions from you all already, and we will be answering those throughout. But if questions come up, please go ahead and go to that section for the questions. All right, it's coming in from everywhere. If you take a look at the chat, you can see coming in from all over the world, really. I saw New Zealand, Houston, Canada, YMCAs, California. It's amazing. Keep it coming, letting us know where you're chiming in from and what organization you're associated with. If you don't know us at Search Institute, if this is your first time with us, we'll kind of share a little bit about ourselves as well. We are an organization that conducts and applies research for promoting positive youth development and advancing equity. And really with the core belief that all young people, each and every young person can thrive when they have the right conditions. Search Institute is an organization that's over 60 plus years old. And was one of the pioneers in positive youth development. And I have the honor to lead this organization now as the CEO and a president of Search Institute. My name is Ben Holtberg, and I'm excited to be with you all. I know that time is always a precious commodity these days, and really am grateful for your attention over the next hour. One thing that is really core to who we are that I want to be able to say and talk about a little bit is that we believe that practical wisdom really comes at the intersection, not just of research insights. We know that research can bring valuable insights, and we have decades of research to really help us understand that there are solid foundations in which we can base conclusions on and we can have conversations about. But that's only one of the forms of wisdom. That also the practice knowledge, the knowledge of the everyday experience of the heroes on the ground working with young people every day, that there's knowledge that's there, that's already in the wisdom that's already in the community is important too. And then the lived experience of the young person themselves, the lived experience of you as the practitioner. All of those things come together for us in a way that produces practical wisdom, that produces this actionable knowledge, that we have to honor those different forms of wisdom. So thank you. And the invitation is to bring your whole self to this webinar today, in the chat, as well as in the future. We really are so grateful for the relationships with our partners that have taught us so much through the years. Many of you who are probably on this call as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We are really in an interesting time. We're at a moment of time where we can hear again the deficit-based language about young people all over the place. We, of course, know about the isolation that many have talked about, the mental health crisis, attendance issues. We have heard about challenges that keep arising when it comes to something new every day around different budgets and the ways that the executive orders are coming through and how that impacts people. And regardless of where you stand on some of these things, we have to be able to understand and hold on to these two truths, that there are challenges and difficulties and pain points right now, while also holding on to the idea of the hope of the future. That we have to be able to think about what we want, what is the vision we have for young people today. And both of these are true. We have challenges and pain, and we have hopes and aspirations. And so first, I want to start out today with having you just write something in the chat. And my first question to you today is, what challenges are you currently facing in your work with young people? What are some challenges that you are facing right now in your work with young people? Please take a moment just to put some things in the chat. Consistency in attendance, absenteeism, distraction, lack of engagement, motivation, disconnection, anxiety, depression, loss of hope, loneliness, self-esteem, bullying, trauma, suicidality, social media. Give a few more moments to just put some things that you are currently facing. There is something about connection, even in pain, connection and difficulty and challenge as practitioners, as people, as the ecosystem around young people, for us to be able to voice these things and to hold these things together. Yeah, so there's so many challenges that you're facing today. Give a couple more seconds, and then we're going to switch to the second question. Overbooked, fear of deportation, apathy, not enough resources. Okay, so now I want to switch a little bit. Now I want you to think about something. I want you to think about the vision of the future. And the question is, what are your hopes and your dreams for each and every young person that you encounter and interact with right now? What are the hopes and dreams for the young people you work with? Take a moment to write those in now. Think big, empathy, self-actualization, thriving, finding joy, being successful, resilience, acceptance. Want them to feel safe, purpose, connection, resilience, joy, hopeful, peaceful, compassionate, wholeness, health and well-being, spirituality, kindness, self-love, thriving in joy. These are the things that so often come up. Keep writing. I love seeing these. Is rarely when we're talking to practitioners and teachers and educators and those that interact with young people, do we hear, we just want our kids to survive or just to get by. Now we're starting to tap into the heart of the matter. Now we're starting to get into this understanding of what we want for the young people in our communities today is not just merely surviving, but thriving. Not merely just getting by, but how we begin to think about what is the potential and possibilities for the young people that we serve. Now, thriving has been around for a while. The word thriving has been discussed and it's been talked about for a while, one of the things that I think is really core, just so we're on the same page here, is that when we think about thriving, we define this way back in 2009 in a paper, but we talk about thriving that represents a dynamic and bidirectional interplay of a young person intrinsically energized by discovering their specialness and their developmental context that know, affirm, celebrate, encourage, guide, and benefit from its expression. That thriving involves not just the individual development, but it also involves the contribution to the community in a meaningful way. That thriving is not just trying to get young people to avoid certain things or to decrease pathology or to reduce risk, but it's also what are we drawing young people towards? That it involves their strengths, that thriving is a strength-based approach that involves character strengths, those things that are uniquely there, that the inherent goodness in each and every one of the young people that we serve has to have the opportunity to be able to develop these sparks. And if you all know what sparks look like with your young people. Oh man, when you see it, when that kid walks in and they got that spark, something lights them up just for that first time, and you see it and you experience it and you recognize it, it's something very, very special. And that spark has the opportunity to turn into a sense of purpose. And when purpose gets aligned with resources and opportunity, now we're talking about thriving because it's making a contribution to something bigger than the self. This is what we're talking about when we talk about thriving. But it can feel overwhelming right now because teachers, parents, educators, youth workers, we are all overwhelmed and saturated with more programming, different apps, more playbooks, more toolkits, all kinds of wonderful resources. But sometimes unintentionally, these wonderful resources can almost be balled up together, and it adds up to try harder. And we can be so busy doing these things for young people that we have to get back to what is the heart of the matter. What do we know is the difference that makes a difference? And that is relationships. It is the quality of relationships in the young person's life that both helps bring out their best and their character strengths and their development, but also provides the access to resources and opportunity for them to thrive. And yet we know that we're not just talking about relationships in the sense of being able to talk to young people or them feeling comfortable with you. All of those are important, but we're talking about relationships that are developmental, that are meeting the developmental needs and the inherent questions that young people ask, that they're wondering, who am I? Where do I belong? And what can I contribute? That when we describe developmental relationships, they're the close connections to help young people discover who they are, cultivate those abilities and those strengths to shape their own lives, and learn how to engage with and contribute to the world around them. This is so important for us to think about what are the types of relationships that are critical as the vehicle for change for young people. So we've been studying this for a while. And when we found with our developmental relationships framework over the last 10 years in particular, even though it's been a part of our DNA of our history from our developmental assets work, that's 5 elements emerge: expressing care, helping young people feel like they matter, that they are people of value, challenging growth, that we believe in their potential, that they can add something to the world right now. We want that best to come out in them. Providing support. You can do hard things. We won't do it for you, but we will walk alongside you and support you through the process. Sharing power, giving them opportunities to lead and to have voice and choice, and then finally expanding possibilities. That we've been really tracking these over time and looking at trends from 2020, 2021 was the first year we started looking at these trends until today. So today I'm going to share some of the trends that we're seeing today and talk a little bit about developmental relationships and the impact that we're seeing. So this is a sample from this last year of a total of about 25,000 young people. And you can see the different diversity of different groups, from grade to race and ethnicity to gender. for some of the demographics that are here. And if you look at this bar graph and you look at that first bar, you can see that overall young people report moderate levels of developmental relationships. And this has been about on trend of what we've seen since 2021. 2020 to 2021, the score was around 64. It bumped up to about 68 in the following year, and then it came back down to 66 this year. And just like we've seen over the trend of the last several years, expanding possibilities has been the lowest reported element of the developmental relationships. And why is this so important? Because we know that developmental relationships impact the personal development, both character development and social emotional strengths, the very things that are really important for our young people as they are in this time of development and growth, which is really, when we talk about adolescence, a window of opportunity, to grow, to change, to define themselves. And this becomes really important for us to be able to say, not only do they have these developmental relationships, but do they have the types of developmental relationships that really meet their developmental needs. And one practitioner says it this way, as this beautifully captures this idea of utilizing developmental relationships to give the foundations for young people, but also for the character strengths. That it's not just about giving them the opportunity to the internship, but how do we develop their confidence and their sense of autonomy and independence, so when they step into those roles of internship or a job or opportunity in education, that they feel like they are equipped with what they need to be able to thrive. And this becomes really important as we think about this and bringing out the best in the young people we serve. And we know that relationships is an enhancer, that it enhances everything, that sometimes what we can focus on a lot of those challenges that we talked about at the beginning that were flooding the chat, we know that relationships, quality developmental relationships impacts those things. So for the character strengths like leadership and teamwork and future mindedness, this hope for the future, perseverance, respect, and responsibility, we see with the stronger the developmental relationships, the more likely young people are to report on these types of character strengths. And then also in social emotional competence as well, we see the same step up. With the stronger the developmental relationships, the stronger the relationship skills, the stronger the social awareness, decision-making, self-management, and self-awareness. That relationships are not just a nice to have, they are something that enhances all aspects of human development. And it's really hard to overstate. In fact, it's almost impossible to overstate the power and the transformation that relationships can have with the young people we serve. But we also know that relationships for a lot of young people are important for their personal development, but they also need that access to resources and opportunities. When we look at our developmental relationships framework, they have the 5 elements, and then there's actions with each one of those 5 elements. And so these are the action level items that we see. On the top end of it, we have expecting my best, which is challenging growth, respect me, which is kind of that sharing power aspect. There's setting boundaries, which is providing support. There's hold me accountable, which is challenging growth. And then there's be dependable, which is expressing care. These are the top 5 action steps that young people reported. And then on the bottom 5, what we see really is that bottom 3 are all expanding possibilities: connect, inspire, broaden horizons. And then sharing power is let me lead and include me. These become really important focuses for us because we consistently see these bottom 5, or not necessarily these 2 elements reflected in the bottom 5 of sharing power and expanding possibilities. both which are absolutely critical to character strength development as well as social emotional competencies. When we think about giving kids the opportunity to lead and to develop and to try things on and to be able to see a world that's bigger than themselves and have purpose. One parent said it this way about an organization that her child went to. I just think that when you're looking for your purpose, it's impossible to know what all is out there. Especially as a teen. If you are the first person in your family that's possibly going to college, just understanding that the whole world is different in and of itself. So I think if you are able to challenge growth and expand possibilities, you're able to show, like they've been saying, let me get you connected to this person or this person. When we think about that access, that the world is bigger, I cannot, I know you all can think about the people in your lives, the people in your lives who have helped you see something beyond what you thought was possible, that believed in you, and showed you a world that was beyond what you thought you could even do. For me, I think of coaches in my life. I think of teachers in my life. I think of Dr. Bucher and Alec Musakuma, who was my coach, and the ways they believed in me and helped me see things outside of what I knew in my world were so critical for my own development. And so I would invite you, I'm going to go into the last section here before I hand it off to Monica to really talk about how this plays out in practice, is who are some of the people in your lives that impacted you and helped you see the world bigger, that expanded your possibilities? Go ahead and drop those people in the chat as well as we go into this last section. Developmental relationships are important, but we also have to think about what's around developmental relationships. The relational climate we often talk about as the soil, developmental relationships as the roots, that the roots grow strong and they get interconnected, but they require nutrients in the soil, and the soil is that climate. It goes beyond the dyadic relationships to how young people are seeing you treat your colleagues, as well as how they're treating you're treating other young people in the space, whether it's in the classroom or the program. And this relational climate becomes really critical, that we define as having to be intentional for all youth, being inclusive so there's a sense of belonging, and then equitable in the sense of meeting the unique needs of the young people in that environment. And this becomes really important when we think about intentionality, is often we are intentional about something, but what we find consistently over and over and over is a gap between what young people report they're experiencing and what the adults are reporting that they're giving. And that this gap between what is expressed and what is experienced is really important for us to address, because what young people are experiencing is what drives their outcomes, is what impacts their lives. And so, as you can see from this bar chart, on the right side is the adults' reports, that is much higher than what we see of the young people's reports, with the most pronounced one in expressing care, actually. And so sometimes we have to begin to think about, are what we are expressing being picked up? Is what we are expressing being experienced? And if not, how do we begin to close that gap? That is about being intentional. And we also, when we think about inclusion and belonging, the developmental relationships become an enhancer of even the experience. This is an example of the classroom indicators, of the instruction quality, of the order or the feeling of order in the classroom, of the engagement or captivation of the material, of the student voice themselves, the feeling safe, fair, and a sense of belonging. All of these indicators are actually increased with high developmental relationships, with strong developmental relationships. And so we also want to think about, how is that the inclusion of this happening where young people are feeling a sense of belonging, and the root of that is in relationships. And then finally, we have to be able to ask the question and think about who is and is not getting developmental relationships. And when we go through this process, it starts with dignity. It starts with the belief that there is goodness and inherent value and worth in each and every young person that we serve, and that they deserve to have the developmental relationships, not only for their needs to be met, but also for the opportunity to thrive and develop their character strengths of who they are. And then it moves to curiosity and the bravery to say who is and is not getting that. And then empathy for how do we better understand why is this going on with maybe this group or this particular group or this grade level? And then having the courage to make choices for improvement, even when it's difficult. That this process helps us. There's some examples of what we found in this data, but data can be disaggregated in multiple ways. But when you have data, it begins to allow you to look at this idea of who is and who is not getting these developmental relationships, and how do you make that change. So I'm going to now move to introducing Monica Dixon, who is our new Senior Director of Solutions. She is focused on creating and improving Search Institute Solutions portfolio, including resources, professional learning, and also coaching for organizations. Prior to here, she's been for decades been working with schools at a state level, at district and school planning, professional learning, and implementation, evaluation of equity-based multi-tiered systems of support with the Swift Education Center at KU before this. I am so glad Monica Dixon is at our organization, and I'm so excited for you to hear from her and for her to bring on our next guest. So Monica, I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you, Ben, and I appreciate the fact that everybody is, here today. And when I think about the knowledge and the wisdom that is within this virtual space, I want everybody just to pause for just a moment. When I see the number of folks who are showing up, think about the impact we'll have, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. But the thing that I want us to all think about when I'm bringing on these two spectacular people we have with this lived experience is I want to ask you all a question. And that question comes from this. Ben just told a story. And in that story, I'm going to ask you, where do you fit? Where do we make a change in our society that makes it better? Because one of the things I also want us to understand, and I know each and every one of us understand this, but I just want to put this out there just for a little bit of amplification, and that is we are always working for a future we never see. And so when we think about it, we get to it and it's already past. So I want you to think about that for just a moment. Like we're trying to correct for, help enhance. Like when we see the waterfall of challenges faced, the one thing that my daughter made me attuned to is she was like, you're an adult and you're the person who has created all of these, or you're not solving for these. So how as a collective do we solve for this? So I'm going to ask the question again. In this story, where do you fit? And how do we solve for a future that we do not see? So when it comes, it's already here and it's already the present. So I want you to think about that for just a moment. And with that, we're going to have two dynamic speakers come on with their lived experience. And the first one I want to introduce is Sarah White, who is the Director of Teacher Development with the Minnetonka Public Schools. Sarah is an experienced educational leader with a strong background in leadership, development, technology integration, curriculum design, and performance evaluations. She has, just like probably all of us on here, a whole list of things I could say, but I think it's probably more important for her to share her story. But before that, I'm going to introduce Kevin Gilmore. He is the Collective Impact Manager of Workforce Readiness with Partnership for Success. Kevin is responsible for facilitating and coaching collective impact initiatives and supports P4S's workforce readiness projects and partner development efforts. And so what we want to do is really take that data that we were talking about and that practical wisdom and really put it into practice. And so I want you to hear these two stories, and then I will come on after that. So Sarah, if you would like to start, go ahead.
Thank you, Monica, for that introduction. As Monica mentioned, I'm the Director of Teacher Development for Minnetonka Public Schools, a suburb of Minneapolis. We're a district of just over 11,000 students, and we're situated around Lake Minnetonka, which is one of Minnesota's 10,000 lakes. And really, it's a lovely place to live during the summer. Beginning in the 2020-21 school year, our school board identified belonging as a school board goal. Oops. The goal that year is on the slide. And important to note is that last sentence, that as a district, we will strive to make sure each student feels heard, respected, included, valued, and connected to our community, a feeling that they belong. We focus our efforts on the lived student experience. The map on the screen shows the journey of our district with the Search Institute that began in early 2021. We started our journey with the Search Institute with learning about the fundamentals of developmental relationships, with the goal of developing a shared language and common understanding around the key elements and actions of the developmental relationship framework. It was important that our staff have this shared understanding prior to either they or their students taking that first iteration of the survey. We then focused on developing skills and mindsets needed to create relationship-rich environments. The Search Institute introduced 2 key strategies to nurture relationships with young people: being intentional and being inclusive, and how to bring those to life with tools and resources to use in our day-to-day practice. In order to take action, it was important to understand the current state of relationships with our students. The Developmental Relationship Survey students and teachers completed provided those insights. Foundational to the success of this work was the support and the engagement of the school board and the district and site administrator. Dr. Holtberg met with our school board on more than one occasion to ensure that everyone in the organization was on the same page. And while this journey may appear to have been fairly straightforward, it was not without obstacles. I'd like to share with you a few lessons that we've learned over our years of partnering with the Search Institute. Every year, our students and staff take the Developmental Relationship Survey at about the same time of year, in that window between Thanksgiving and winter break. Once the data have been collected and analyzed, Search Institute meets with our district administrators and site administrators to share the strengths, the growth areas, and how averages can mask the nuances. Their insights as to how various demographic groups were experiencing developmental relationships differently were foundational in determining how we might respond to the data. Administrators set goals each year on their data, and when they meet with the superintendent and when they present to the school board, they share progress towards these goals on developmental relationships. Following the meeting with the Search Institute, I meet individually with each building administrator to really look at their site level data. We disaggregate the data and look at differences in experiences. One year at one site, we noticed that our Latin and Latinx students were experiencing relationships differently than their peers. After a real concerted effort in connecting with these students, we noticed that the gap between student groups, particularly with the Latinx and Latinx, really virtually disappeared. At these meetings, we developed action plans to meet the goals. As Ben was mentioning earlier, it's really important to look at those gaps between how our adults perceive they are creating relationships and how our youth are experiencing them, and try to unpack what those differences are. Some action gaps in our experience have been narrow. 98% of adults believe they expect the best of our students, and students report experiencing them. About 94% of our students report the same. Again, as Ben mentioned, other gaps are wider. For example, at one site in 1 year, 62% of our youth were experiencing the action of be warm at strong or moderate levels, and 98% of adults felt that they were showing kids they liked being with them at moderate or strong levels. These gaps, particularly in the express care element, can be really challenging to accept. In our first couple of years, there were some administrators and teachers who were skeptical about the student responses. They challenged the way that maybe they were written. Maybe students didn't really understand what was being asked. They projected that the students were referring to relationships with someone else, the teacher next door or the site across town, rather than reflecting on what they could learn from it. When adults feel so strongly that they are expressing a relational experience and our youth are experiencing them at different levels, it can be challenging to accept. So we really work hard with our adults to frame the results as formative feedback. One way that has been really helpful in overcoming skepticism has been elevating student voice. Because while we can speculate on what the survey results mean, really the best source of understanding are our kids. If there's a gap between how youth are experiencing relationships and how adults are expressing them, the best way to understand that discrepancy is to talk to the kids. Administrators at each of our sites have found creative ways to elevate student voice. Some sites held focus groups and reported back to their staff what they learned. 2 of our buildings literally had student voices elevated directly to their teachers. What you see on the screen is one of our middle schools. The middle school administration recorded students sharing what experiencing the actions of developmental relationships look like, feel like, and sound like. And they also shared what the absence of developmental relationships look like, feel like, or sound like. At the high school, a video with students sharing their hopes for relationships was developed and shared at a professional learning day. Teachers then reflect on what they hear and create action plans to do things differently. At the high school, following that video, they really focused in on one of the actions, and they saw a 5% increase in how students were experiencing that action from year over year. We've also been intentional in focusing our efforts on those things that we can influence. While adults have limited influence in what happens outside of their classrooms, they have a great deal of autonomy about what happens within their classrooms. For example, simple actions, greeting students at the door, smiling, using their names, might influence the way that kids feel when they are in their presence. We encourage teachers to imagine the ways they could let students lead, the ways they might support students in reflecting on their failures, looking at each of those actions and how they might develop plans to embed that into their work. Another shift in our thinking has been around where we focus our efforts. In our early years, we considered focusing our greatest opportunities for growth at the actions at the bottom of the ranking. I will concur with what Ben shared. Those are our bottom 5 as well. But when I discovered this visual in one of the many Search Institute resources, I reconsidered whether we should be focusing on those bottom 5, which you can see tend to be on the farther right of the farther end of this continuum of developing relationships. We may wish to ensure that instead students are experiencing those actions of listen, be warm, and respect me, those initial relationship experiences, before we focus on those experiences, those actions further along the continuum. In education, we also often think of the term warm demander, someone with high levels of care and high levels of expectation. While these actions are strong in our data, not every student experiences them, so there is always room to improve. In all of our work with staff, it's important for us to model both activities from the Relationship Builders Guidebook, as well as model approaches from the guidebook. Whenever I have the opportunity to create community building activities or icebreaker activities for teacher colleagues or administrative colleagues, I pull my relationship guidebook off the shelf and look for activities that both could be replicated with other adults or replicated with students. In conclusion, at an instructional coaching seminar many years ago, Dr. Bill Summers, pictured here, leadership coach, author, principal, executive director, professor, shared this quote: "Without relationships, you have no influence." And that simple statement has really been foundational for my work with colleagues, my work with children. And, I just find it to be true in all relationships. And it reminds me that relationships can be a means to influence others, and they can also be an end unto themselves. And with that, I will turn it over to Kevin.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. Hello, everybody. I am Kevin Gilmore with Partnership for Success. I'm really glad to be here with you all and glad to be in the room where we're having a conversation about something that is so important, especially with everything that's going on in the world now. Here in Columbus, Ohio, where one day it is sun shining and just a week ago we had snow and ice. So I am in Columbus, Ohio, doing some work in the workforce readiness space as that was shared. And I get the pleasure to work alongside of partners, community organizations and schools to really work alongside of the young people to support them for their futures, the things that they think about, the things that they dream about, and their goals and their wants and needs. So I just love being here to do this work. I'm going to show a really quick slide here just to kind of frame for you all what Partnership for Success does in that space. And one of the biggest things is we are trying to help our young people through, of course, social emotional learning, academics, equity, and the work that we do to really drive this for them to think about their careers, for them to think about their futures in a way where they get to dream big and do the things that they want to do, no matter if it's a 2-year college, if they want to go to a trade school, if they want to go to a 4-year college, they want to start a business, whatever that is, we are supporting them in all the areas so we can reduce things like trauma and youth violence, but we can really work on wellness and our academic skills and really get them ready for some robust and amazing careers. What I'm going to share with you all today is an impact story of this work and this partnership that we get to do with Search Institute, which has been absolutely amazing. So again, I get the pleasure to work with these different partners, and we have different funding groups who fund this work. This work in particular that I'm going to speak towards is funded by Franklin County Department of Job and Family Services, where they have a program, 9 different agencies in the city called Achieve More and Prosper, AMP, we call it AMP for short, Achieve More and Prosper programs, where coaches get to work alongside of young people during the school day and out of school time, 14 through 24-year-olds, where they're talking about their futures and really helping them get their goals and meet the things that they need to meet so that they can have some really beautiful careers and some really beautiful outcomes for their lives. So these 9 agencies and the work that we get to do with Collective Impact, we were working through some things and we were talking about what do the coaches need to have in their hands to really support these young people. And I am a product of those kind of programs coming from Toledo, Ohio, where a program and my mentors and the coaches and the teachers and the people who wrapped around me had the relationship with me to really help me believe in myself, where I can have rapport and trust with them. And the framework that Developmental Relationships has lined out for us is absolutely amazing, and it aligns so well with the work we need to do when it comes to supporting our young people and really coaching and leaning into that space. And to be able to do that, we have to have conversations. We have to have tough conversations, but you first have to have relationship. I have been in this work for quite some time, and I had the pleasure of being able to do it where I even gotten in doing this work as a coach. I was awarded a national award with the National After School Association for the Next Gen Leader a few years back. And I remember sitting down with one of my funders at the time, who was also with JFS, and he asked me a key question. After getting this award and traveling around and being able to celebrate the work that I was doing, he said, "What are the young people actually saying about the work you're doing?" It was really impactful. I had to pause for a second because I didn't really know the answer. See, those young people I was working with at the time were high school students, and they came in. I was doing some coaching with them, and they were there every day, Monday through Friday. Sometimes wouldn't even go home when program was over. And I thought I had this amazing program that they can be a part of and that they will show up to because they vote with their feet, and they were there every day. I had robotics club. I had some different career things. I had all these different clubs and things that they can take and also get support in any ways of academics that they might need. But when I sat down with my young people to ask them a question and say, why are you showing up every day? Why are you here? And I let them know about my award, and they, celebrated me. I had some amazing young people around me, and they had to tell me something that really had to make me do ouch and rethink. And they said, Mr. Kevin, we're here, but your program is whack. They let me know it was never about the program. I'm like, well, why are you guys here every day? They said, it's you. The relationship we have with you is the reason why we come every day. And because of that, I've been able to support them in expanding possibilities and thinking outside the box. But there was something I learned in that lesson. And that lesson of running programs and being even awarded for it and checking all the boxes for my funder. I never asked my young people. They were never involved in the conversation. I didn't have that relational rapport with them to find out, what do you actually want to see in your program? Now, when we're talking about shared power, that was the place I had to lean into. And it taught me a lot about really getting the voice of our young people involved in the work that we get to do. So I've taken that and I've been able to expand that with my partners and working with them and working with some amazing coaches in this city. And they decided to do the same thing. They said, we're going to launch this tool. We want to get some more information, but we don't just want to do the tool and get the data back. We want to know, how can we really engage with these young people and do something a bit different and really lean in with them in a way where we really are supporting them. And it takes relationship, right? This through line won't matter if we don't have the in-depth relationship that we need to have with young people to make that happen. And so we did. And we started planning and we got together. There were a group of coaches, as you can see in that long picture there. We were thinking through some ideas, getting our cognitive coaching together, think about all the things we need to do, but at the same time, centering it around relationships and how we can deepen those relationships to really serve our young people and their families essentially in a better way. Well, what ended up coming out of that space was this big, bright idea. Now, we're talking about 9 agencies who are funded and sometimes have felt pitted against each other to do the work, but they got together in the room to have a conversation to say, how can we come together to build better relationship with our young people and really serve them well? And we started to plan. Now, think about this, y'all. I got them in the room. We're having a conversation. We started to plan. There was a missing link there. And I left that link out on purpose. I said, what else do we need? We got an idea. We know what we want to do. We want to bring them together. What's missing here? And some people around the room said, we didn't ask the young people. We didn't ask them what they want to have. So because of that, then we started a youth advisory council. So now we have 9 programs who came together to represent representatives from each of those coaching spaces. Now we had young people who are represented from all of those programs who are now building our youth council so that we can come together as a big group to talk about how do we want to really build relationship in a way that really helps sustain you all for your futures, your growth, the things that you need, and the ways you want to be served. Absolutely amazing opportunity. Because of that, we were able to partner with some community partners. We ended up having over 22 partners who showed up, 27 who signed up to be a part of this big event that we did, hosted by COSI. And they came together, and in that room, you had young people sitting at tables alongside of adults and coaches, building relationship, talking about the things that the young people wanted to deepen their understanding in. Financial literacy. They wanted to talk about wellness, mental health. They wanted to talk about, here are the things that we're thinking about our futures. When you're talking about expanded possibilities, here are the things we actually need. We don't need another class or something on resume writing. We need support to understand, how do we communicate in hard situations when we actually land the job? How do we have conversations with our families when things are transitioning in our lives? They wanted to deepen themselves just in that way. And we got in that room and we did that. We had over 200 something young people and adults who were in this one place with those partners where we got to serve together, work together, and grow together in relationship. And some amazing things happened around that time. What we learned about our young people was not just in the space of expanding possibilities, but really collaborating with them on a relational level where we got to deepen our understanding on their needs about their future. See, we do a lot of work where we're building policies and procedures and doing all kinds of ideas and things, and we're saying this in lieu of or doing it for the young person, but did we actually ask them the question? Did we take some time to really lean in with them to find out what they want? We even had something, you can see this picture right here where young people were learning how to tie ties. Just with that's a coach right there. You see with a young man who this young man was working with their coach to learn how to tie ties. The relational rapport in that room was so strongly felt. Even so much so that the partners who came alongside, the community partners who came alongside to be a part of that, because we had a career fair at the end of this, they understood the language of developmental relationships. That's all we're talking about. That's all we're doing. And here's why it's so important to us. We really want to make sure that our young people have access to many things in life. But the one thing that is very grounding is to have an amazing mentor, liaison, or coach in your life, a teacher. You guys listed some of the things that Ben asked you for earlier. Who was that person in your life? Who was that person who helped you get to where you're at today? Don't forget that. It was those relationships that were so important that really deepened to help us get to the places we want to be. And then you see smiling, beautiful faces of young people with their coaches with the young people who are talking about their futures and the things that we never thought we could really work through, like expanding possibilities in a way where the young people had to be a part of the conversation on the front end. It's such an amazing work we get to do with Search, and it's such an amazing time to be able to do that we're continuing this in our county. Actually, we're planning for another one of those events right now because we're really excited to see the movement that we're going through to take the next step to work with young people. Thank you for that time. I'm going to give you back to Ms. Dixon.
Well, Kevin, again, and Sarah, thank you so much for, I'm just going to, say it straight up and not as professional as I probably should say, dropping some knowledge on us because we all want this. And so what I want to do is just have a couple of real quick key takeaways, and then I'm going to throw it back to Ben. And what I really want us to, the takeaways I feel like is to both of those presentations were, we think about relationships as the enhancer, but I also think about the fact that the answer to our most pressing challenges is in the room if we ask the young people who are experiencing those challenges. So when you think about that, you think about Sarah's story and you think about Kevin's story and how once those student voices were elevated, then people were like, this is what we should be doing. This is how we do the work. So using relationships as the enhancer, that is a key component to really expanding on what is necessary to move past the challenges that we think we see for young people and using them as vessels of knowledge to really solve the problems that we're all facing, including them. When we think about us gathered here today, I think about us in ripples and waves. And what I think about is this, is as an individual, we are a ripple, but as a collective, we are the wave. And so when we think about that, how can we be in community on a consistent and constant basis with young people to ensure that their future that we cannot see is improving each and every time? And the other thing that we want to understand about relationships is that, think about it, all of us are sitting in some type of youth serving, youth focused organization, school, out of school time, coalition, support, whatever role we are showing up in, is that it is ongoing. This work is never going to go out of style. So we need to think about how do we lean into it and how do we ensure that we are working as a collective so the load is a little bit lighter for everybody. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben. I think we have time for a couple of questions. Appreciate you all today.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you, Kevin and Sarah. Actually, Monica, Sarah, and Kevin, if you don't mind coming off, putting your cameras on, so we can kind of wrap this up possibly with a couple questions. What a wonderful example both Sarah and Kevin gave of the wisdom that practical wisdom is being integrated into context in the way that makes sense for them, that are the people on the ground doing the work every day, that push this work beyond what we could ever do at Search Institute, and why we have to partner. Because in order for us to reach our mission, it means that we need them. we need our partners. A couple of questions that came up that I would love to hear your thoughts on. And I think we can get one to you, Sarah, and one to you, Kevin. And Monica, there's one for you if we can get there too. But first, to you, Sarah, What are the biggest obstacles in reducing the gap between what adults think they're expressing care and how kids are feeling? What are some of the biggest obstacles you saw with the teachers in closing that gap?
I think the biggest obstacle that we faced was sort of not wanting to believe the data. There was just this resistance to, because I'm committed to expressing this care, they have to be feeling it. And the data isn't about me, it's about someone else.
Yeah.
So really, I think again, going back to elevating those student voices as a solution to that, letting students share. You think you're showing me that you care by doing this, but really what I need is X, Y, or Z. I think that's been the biggest game changer for us in addressing the gap, and just knowing that there's always a gap. We frame it, there's always a gap in perception for any event.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it's just the degree of discrepancy.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. And it really has been an amazing process of working with you all over the last several years. And Kevin, as we have really begun to work with you all, and I think one of the things that you bring in such an amazing way is this kind of also this trauma-informed lens. And one of the questions was around developmental relationships and being trauma-informed. Could you talk a little bit about how those two kind of work together for you when you're working with your young people?
It's funny because I'm kind of going to echo what was just shared. It's closing that perception gap, right? This belief that we know and understand everything from some information that we might have learned in a workshop, outside of having the conversation with the young person and really letting them express how they feel and what they're thinking and what they're believing. If we ask the question, they'll answer if we make space for them. And so one of the things we're learning is you can have that lens or have that skill set to understand what trauma informed means and how you can respond, but you still have to have deep rapport and relationship with a young person for them to trust you to share what's really going on in their lives. And when you do that and make space for them, they will respond to you in a way where they feel safe to let you know the things that's going on and might even have some solutions of help they might need in that process.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I mean, I love that shift in the trauma informed idea of like moving from what's wrong with this young person to me, there's something really cool about saying moving from what's wrong with this young person to what's their story. And relationships, developmental relationships are the currency of that. Like in order to really allow for that story to emerge, we have to get to know young people and really listen to them as well. Thank you for that. Very much. I mean, I could talk to you all day long, and I'm sure that our audience could listen to you all day long. Monica, one question that came up too is around really thinking about how do we challenge educators and youth workers to recognize when they're treating youth kind of in this oppressive way, or they're treating them as not being on the equal plane as them when it comes to listening to their voice and hearing them. What are some thoughts about how to shift maybe some teacher educators, youth workers towards that understanding of equity when it comes to working with youth?
The biggest thing is what I always say is, what is your locus of focus? The thing I have the biggest control over is myself. And so if I'm not seeing the results that I would like to see in the youth, then I'm always going to reflect back to me. Is like, what is going on? The thing that we end up doing is when we don't see reflected what we want to see, we assume it is somebody else and not us. And so that key part is reflect back, hold up a mirror, take a selfie, look at yourself and say, how am I showing up in this space? And am I showing up in this space in a way that's allowing, or I shouldn't even say allowing, because that is positionality, that is creating space for youth to show who they truly are? Or am I blocking that? So am I the person, putting them in the shade, or am I the person making sure they have the sunlight? And so
That's really good. And I think what you all have kind of said and summarized is like, it's not about, when we involve youth, it's not about getting youth voice just for getting youth voice, because we know a lot of people who will get student voice, youth voice, but it really is because they improve, they bring solutions, they make contributions right now. And it's not about tokenizing a voice or lifting up a voice, but it's truly involving them as problem solvers, not as problems to be solved. So thank you all very much for being with us today. I know we're coming up on time as we begin to close out this time together. I want to end with one activity and say one thing. We do have a resource hub that has a lot of our activities that are free online. You can go on there and explore those resources that have some of our activities from the Relationship Builders Guidebook. And I would love for you, as we leave here today, just to say one thing that to remind your future self, what is one thing you can do with what you learned today with the young people you serve? What is one thing that you can do? Go ahead and put that in the chat as we close out. And then finally, we want input. We want input. We want to create community. We want people engaging. I love the engagement that's in this chat. Please give us feedback. This is a link to a survey. If you could take just a couple minutes to take a picture of this and fill out the survey, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all you do for our kids. Thank you for the impact that you're making so that we truly can make a better world. And we look forward to next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.